thanks to the Rockland Public Library. We really enjoy co-sponsoring these events because our home is right next door, and you'll see afterwards, we will not be doing book sales and that type. The closer it gets to 7:30, the sooner we have to go down the hall and down the other hall into the society, where we have refreshments, and Barbara will sign books, and we hope Virginia will sign books. We will give her whatever she needs to sign. Before I introduce anyone, I want to say something about this program, because this program's been in the works for over 2 years. John Ware, who was the director of the Historical Society, back in 2019, said, there's this woman in the South End who's been lobstering for 90 years. And I said, you're kidding. And he said, she has, and we really ought to do a program. So one thing led to another. We talked to the Lobster Festival people. They thought she'd make a wonderful Grand Marshal for the parade. We set up a program, and then we had a pandemic. So we were not able to have programs in person like we are tonight. So our in-house, I was going to say photogenic, our in-house film creating Wayne Gray, who's in the back. Wayne, stand up so they can see you. Wayne Gray took this whole project over to make it a virtual project, because they'd have virtual programs during the pandemic. So Wayne talked people into going out on the boat with Virginia and Max and filming, and one thing led to another. As soon as the film was released, it went to Channel 6 and all over the country and all over the world, and Virginia has become quite a celebrity. Probably because of this celebrity, Barbara Walsh has written a book, which is allegedly for children, but I see a lot of adults sitting here with this book. I have read the book. I think it's for adults and children. I think Barbara did a really good job, and I'll say a little bit about her, but the illustrator did a wonderful job of capturing Virginia. This was one of 4 virtual programs that we had, but this has turned into a phenomenon, and it has given the society, the city of Rockland, the state of Maine, and as far as you want to go to the next neighboring planet, really, really good publicity, and we certainly appreciate it, Virginia. Barbara Walsh is here tonight with her book called The Lobster Lady, which she has been signing. She will sign afterward. We do have to go into the society because when the library closes, they turn on a series of alarms, and the police will come. So after we finish the program, we will go down to the Historical Society rooms. Barbara Walsh is a well-known children's author. She has worked with several illustrators, including one that you all know, Jamie Wyeth did a book with Barbara. She had a reporting career before she started writing seriously, and I heard she won a Pulitzer Prize. Is that true? So we have a Pulitzer Prize winning author. And I really enjoyed, Barbara came to the Lobster Festival, and she came down to the tent. The problem we had this year at the Lobster Festival was each day got hotter. Well, by the time Saturday came around, it was at least 90 something, and in the tent, that would make it 95 to 100. Even though we borrowed 5 fans, we still could not get cooled off. So Barbara came and signed books in the tent. Virginia was in the parade because she was Grand Marshal in 2020, and so she did get to ride in the parade, but thankfully she went home. She would have roasted in that tent. So if any of you were disappointed that you didn't see her, that's too bad. So we thank Barbara for coming to the Lobster Festival and doing that with us. I don't need to say a lot about Virginia Oliver. I know her family. Her son Billy was in my brother David's class in school, and they graduated in 1960. I'm much younger than that. I graduated in 65. But we at the Rockland Historical Society so much appreciate what you have done for us, whether you wanted to or not. That I have two things for you tonight. One is a lifetime membership. Now, don't laugh. No, none of you can say how old this lady is going to live to be. It says, this is to certify that the Board of Directors of the Rockland Historical Society hereby bestow the honorary title of Life Member of the Rockland Historical Society on Virginia Oliver in grateful recognition of her inspiring lessons on lobstering and life to the Rockland Historical Society, to Midcoast Maine, to America and beyond. On behalf of the Board of Directors, we bestow this title on the 25th day of August 2022, signed by me. The other thing that we have for Virginia is a gift certificate to a Rockland restaurant that will allow her to take as many of her children as she wants out to eat. Now I'll turn to Barbara Walsh, who will tell you about her adventures, and I don't know if she wants Wayne to share in this or not, but we do interactive. So Wayne, if she says something, jump up and correct her.
Thank you, Brian. And can everybody hear me okay? I'm Irish. I don't do well with these electronic things, so but I'll use this because I want everybody to hear. So I am honored to be here, and Ginny just makes me smile, and I think that's true of anyone who meets her or knows of her. And like Brian said, I'm a journalist for many years, not as many as Ginny's been lobstering, but I started, 1981, graduated from college, and major was journalism. So I love stories, I love people's stories. The Pulitzer was back, some of you may remember, it's 1988. William Horton Jr. was a first-degree killer who escaped from prison. And in the 1988 election with George Bush Sr. and Michael Dukakis, Horton came into the picture. We were reporting on him for a year because in Massachusetts, they were letting killers, rapists out of prison on the weekend unsupervised, saying, if they're good in prison, they got to go out on the weekend. And so Horton decided, life in prison. He had robbed a gas station, stabbed this poor 15-year-old 30 times who had given him the $30. And Horton and his two friends went away for life in prison. Well, the Walpole back in the time was saying, well, we had riots, so maybe if we give them a little carrot and say, you get out on the weekend if you're good inside. So Horton went out a bunch of times and then won a lottery ticket and said, I'm not going back. So, who could blame him? He ended up in Maryland where he held a couple hostage, raped the woman repeatedly, would have killed them both. He stabbed the fiancée, but they escaped. And so we started getting calls in the newsroom from Newt Gingrich, and we're like, who is Newt? But it soon became part of the national debate. It became a television commercial with Horton going through revolving doors. So anyway, that's the Pulitzer. And I've been a journalist, and still am, but for many years. So when I see special stories in Maine, and Ginny is certainly one of Maine's treasures, I, like many people, had seen the show on 207, and then I'd watched the Historical Society's, wonderful film, and I just said, oh my God, is she a book? And so I couldn't get to her fast enough. I was in the middle of moving and boxing up all my house, and so I couldn't get to see her till October, but I think I got your number pretty fast, and I believe you answered, or maybe it was Max, and I explained who I was and said, can I come see you? And Ginny said, oh, sure, which is what she says to everybody. So that's why she's known around the world. But I came up and, sat in the living room with Ginny, and Wayne was there as well, and, started asking questions and more questions. And the way I like my stories is typically, from chronologically, from when she was a little girl to present. And so, of course, I came back a second time, and in between I learned that Max loved Jif peanut butter, so I got him some Jif. Got to keep him happy. And but every moment spent with Ginny and Max was wonderful, because they just, for those that know them, obviously family and friends, they're just regular Mainers, and they don't put themselves, even though all this attention, Ginny's still Ginny, which I think is also magical. But like Brian said, the story to me, people will say, what age is this book for? And I say 0 to 110, because Ginny's message of, what are you gonna do, sit around and end up in a wheelchair? And, doing what you love keeps you young. And I'm sure you've all heard, when people ask Ginny when she's gonna stop, when she's gonna retire, she's like, when I die. And I just think that message, especially in this era of everyone's staring at phones and computers, and it's making us all sick. Here's Ginny still going and inspiring the world, and possibly maybe aliens on other planets. Ginny, they're gonna come next. They're gonna knock on the door and say, Max, we're taking your mom. We want to study her. But so the book, to me, it's doing well, because again, illustrations are great. I think the story, I tried to keep it simple, but not dumb it down, because I think kids learn from bigger words, but adults love it too, and it's a great message. So, but it was really enjoyable doing it, and like Brian said, we'll sign books after, and but along the way, I kept calling, and Max would sometimes answer and sometimes Ginny, but they never, which is amazing, because as a reporter, I'll tend to interview you till you're like, Barbara, that's enough. No more questions. But Ginny or Max never minded. Ginny would say, oh, sure, and answer questions. And Wayne also, I wanted everything to be accurate. So they were all very patient with me. And this book, I first went to Ginny's house in October, came back again, I think late October, and then interviewed on the phone. But this book, the illustrator started in January. And I said, can you get all these 13 illustrations done by May? And that's a lot. And she said, sure, I think I can. So she was in Florida, and I was in Maine, and we'd talk about what I wanted for the illustrations. And then she got sick. She's had spinal stenosis, so she was supposed to come back in April. She came home, supposed to come home in May. She came home in April. And I kept calling her Seabiscuit, because I was like, come on, Seabiscuit, that horse movie where Seabiscuit's not giving up. And so she continued to do it until she finished the last illustration the day before surgery on June 1st. And this book came out July 8th. So I don't know if I'll ever do a book fast again like that, but I wanted to get it done. And so it is sort of a miracle, and I think meant to be. But I'm just briefly going to talk a bit about the other books, and then we can do a Q&A, and I'm sure, Ginny can answer things, Max maybe, or Wayne. But as you all know, like Brian said, this was my first children's book, and illustrated by Jamie Wyeth, and it's a true story about my daughters when their dog Sammy died. Emma was 5, Nora was 3. And it was their first experience with death. And so, Emma kept saying, why can't Sammy come back? And Nora, my feisty one, she would point at the sky, she was 3, and say, Sammy, you come down here. And she'd say, maybe if Daddy gets a really tall ladder, he can go get Sammy. But the illustrations are stunning, and because it dealt with death realistically, because I'm a journalist, I'm not gonna make it candy sweet. Death is painful, and especially for little kids. But, sorry, I can't multitask here, but I'll try to show you, hang on, I'll show you a few of the pictures. But my daughter used to dress up Sammy, so, you know, it was whimsical, but Jamie's art is just stunning. I'm just trying to find one that are emotional. But, you know, things like, you know, if you've lost a dog, you know, when they start to get sick, you know, they can't get up. And so the book is beautifully illustrated, and I couldn't get an agent because agents were like, the book is too sad, and it's too real, and it won't sell. And I said, yeah, bullshit. I'm gonna print this book. And I told my daughters, this is gonna be in a bookstore one day. So a friend said, call Jamie Wyeth. And I'm like, yeah, well, right. She's like, yeah, sure. I just call him right up. Say, hey, can you do this? But then she says he loves dogs. I'm like, oh. So I got his number. I call him up, and I was like, Jamie? And he says yes, and I'm like, oh, I expected his secretary or something. I says, Barbara here, do you think you might take a look at the story and consider illustrating? He's like, oh, sure, send it along. Sort of like Jenny, oh, sure, send it along. So I send it, and the ending was realistic. We cremated Sammy and then threw the ashes in his favorite field. What happened to be windy that day, so they all blew back on Nora. And I sort of ended it that way, and my friends were like, that's a little dark, you know. So then I ended it with, they would always see Sammy in the clouds, as most kids do, they see their dogs. So I rewrote it, and you'll see, hang on. Yeah, so this is like the last page, you can see the dog. So I rewrote it, sent it to Jamie again, and I was coming back from Newfoundland for research on my other book, and I sent the second version to Jamie, and my husband says to me, I was in Toronto airport, he's like, Jamie sent you a letter, and it had Wolfman and Frankenstein stamps because he loves Halloween. And he said, don't kill me. I opened it and read it, and he wants to do your book. And I'm like in the Toronto airport going, ah, you know, like a crazy woman, as long as I didn't get arrested. And so I come back, and so then I go to Tennant's Harbor and meet Jamie to talk about the book. And I'm a little bit nervous. So I'm sitting there in the Tennant's Harbor house, surrounded by Wyeth paintings, Rockwell Kent, millions of dollars worth of painting, and I'm getting a little nervous. And I'm in the room where he had just hung his first gull painting. This was back in, I think 2015 I was there. Oh, sorry, 2006. And so I'm in this room, and I'm looking at all his paintings, and in the corner, there's a stepladder, and Jamie loved terriers, it still does, I think. So in the corner, there's a stepladder, and a little black terrier. And I'm like, oh, because the room wasn't very big. It's like from that wall to this. So the terrier, I'm like, you're a real quiet dog. And then I get closer and I realize it's a stuffed dog. And I'm like, okay, it's time to sit down. I gotta pass out and he's gonna find me on the floor here. So he comes in and I'm like, what's up with the stuffed dog? And he said him and Andy Warhol used to roam around New York City, and they found a shop that stuffed dead animals, so he bought a cat and a few dogs. But you know, Jamie was incredible to work with, and of course some of you came to the Farnsworth, our first signing. We had 1,000 people, so that was a little crazy. But that was the first one, and I'm just briefly going to mention the Newfoundland book was my only adult book. This is set in, my ancestors come from Newfoundland and Ireland, and my dad, who passed away in 2016, his father abandoned him from Newfoundland. So when we were growing up, I was told, you know, I'd say, where's Grandpa? And he's dead. Oh, okay. And then when I'm 18, my dad says, oh no, he's in California with another family. And I'm like, okay. Didn't ask much more, because when you'd say Ambrose's name, my dad would leave the room. Ambrose abandoned my dad and my uncle and my Nana twice. And it was very painful. My dad was old enough to realize how bad off they were, because, you know, they had no money, they had nothing. So then as a journalist, I come home one day and my dad visited me in Maine, and I said, Dad, I want to write books. He said, what kind? And I said, sort of like The Perfect Storm. He said, you have a story like that in your family. So that began the August Gale, and going to Newfoundland and learning about the grandfather I never knew. And then Captain Patty, who was my great uncle, they were all caught out in a 1935 gale. And so this is the story, it kind of goes back and forth in time. And, you know, so it killed me because for 9 years I said to my dad as I researched, I would let him read chapters like, odd chapters, not the Ambrose chapters. And he kept saying, why am I just getting these? I'm like, because Dad, I'll never finish the book. I kept thinking, I'm gonna hurt you. I'm writing about your painful childhood. He says, don't worry, I trust you. And I'm thinking, I'm a journalist. I'm gonna write the truth. And so when he read it, I said, all right, if you wanna change anything, I'll take it out. And he said, well, a few things. Aunt Ruth needs to be mentioned. I'm like, okay, Uncle Tommy needs to be in there. He just helped him out in California. And that was about it. And I just about fell off my chair. I said, that's it. But it helped my dad heal, and we grew closer as we did tours. And I'm trying to get the movie made. I've written a script. If anybody has any movie connections, let me know. But just briefly, you can see a pattern here. The Goose Lady is from Augusta, Maine. She dressed her cement long goose for 24 years. And I found out about her. She made over 100 outfits until she passed in a few weeks before she was 94. And it was on the Rockland Road, Route 17. So I saw a front page story in the KJ, Goose celebrates its 20th birthday. And I'm thinking, Goose, what is this goose? And then I realized this goose is just so popular. So I went and interviewed her, got her number pretty fast, and said, I want to write a book. And so interviewed her, and I sadly didn't get this done quick enough before she passed. But the goose has now been transferred to a local school where the kids dress it. So again, it was my first of Special Maine People. And this one, the Deer Man, I was in the hairdressers with my hair all crazy with color on it, looking pretty scary. And this guy was in the chair, he's from Mount Vernon, talking about family of deer that would come to his farm, generation after generation of deer, because in the winter they would be starving. And so, and then one deer, he would get to know, little guy became big guy, and Big Mama passed on. But Christmas Eve, these deer would drop their antlers on the spot where he fed them. So I would go and spend a lot of time with him. Good thing you weren't closer to me. I'd be there every day at your house. But this came out, last year, I think. But this took, again, probably a couple years to do. And then just finally, this is my only fictional book. It's about an owl that rescues her forest friends. But that's my, the stories. And I'm always looking for another special person to write about. So if anyone has ideas. But that's it, and I'm gonna open it up to Q&A, and like Brian said, for those of you that have got your book signed, we can move to the room, and I'll quickly do others, and then for those that haven't bought books, and we can all kind of get to the other room. But I'm gonna open it up to Q&A, not only for me, but for Virginia, for Wayne, for Max. I know Max does, he's a man of few words, but we can get him to talk a little, right, Jenny? We'll poke him. You can promise him Jif peanut butter, he might talk to you. Oh, nope, I guess, all right. He might not talk, so. But any questions about anything, I know most of you probably are interested. You're here tonight to meet Jimmy, and, but any questions, feel free.
What was the title of the book you wrote about Willie Horton?
Oh, it wasn't actually a book. I spent a year reporting on it. Like the Massachusetts prison system wouldn't talk to us because it was obviously a big fat mess. Dukakis wouldn't talk to us because he didn't write that law, but he didn't change it. And he was, so I used to camp out at prisons and go in and interview lifers and do things that scared everybody in my family. I'd be like staked out in front of a corrections officer's house. So it was a year-long series, so that's what we won a Pulitzer for. Yeah, it was quite a lesson as a journalist, how we changed the law, affected a presidential election, and killers in Massachusetts don't get out on the weekend anymore. And rightly so. I mean, it was crazy law.
Is it available on YouTube?
You can, if you Google, there is a CNN thing where I talked about it, but you can pull up, if you put Willie Horton in, you'll pull up lots of things. Yeah, no, it was and he's still in prison in Maryland, where when he was convicted there, the judge said, tell Massachusetts don't leave the porch light on because Willie ain't never coming home. And it was just, as a reporter, I'm writing it down, oh, that's good stuff, can you say that again? but you can go online and you'll pull up plenty of William Horton. But anybody else about?
I have a question for Jenny. Ginny, you're a wonderful role model as a lobster woman, and I'm curious to know whether you have met with any young girls and other women who have been so inspired by you, and what your stories are about interacting with women and girls. Have you had any stories or any reactions to more women and girls going into lobstering?
Nobody went with their husbands when I first started. There was nobody.
Nobody.
But then they all kept going. Now a lot of, wives and girlfriends go now. A lot of them. But things just go to try.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I have met, at different signings, some young women, lobster women, who know you and in some way, they know about you, and I think it's wonderful. No offense to the men in the room, but there's not enough books about women.
Right.
Biographies, I mean, it's the way history has evolved, that women have not been on the front cover of books as much as they should be. So I think that's part of why this story is so important, that Ginny's a very strong woman, and pardon my whatever French, but people say she's badass, and I tend to agree. That's how I'm signing books now. If it's a feisty woman, I'm like, you're badass like Ginny. And I think the Historical Society should make a T-shirt that says, be like badass Ginny. Keep moving.
Right.
I think they'll make $1 million on those. Forget those Maine T-shirts. Get the Ginny shirts out there.
Yeah, right.
But any other, go ahead.
Jenny, when you spoke to the Action Club in Thomaston, I think a lot of us were impressed when you told about how you got ready to go out on the lobster boat. And made sure you had your lipstick on and your earrings on.
I don't still wear my jewelry.
No, and that was impressive to me too, because Ginny always looks like she's just $1 million. I mean, I'm amazed, yeah. And I don't know, Ginny, if you wanna say why you put your makeup on, your lipstick and your jewelry when you go out in the lobster boat, because you're out in the lobster boat and you're with Max and the lobsters. So why do you put all that, well, you don't do much, but why just,
I just don't feel dressed if I don't have my lipstick on.
oh, there you go. Teach me how to do that. Any other, I think there was someone.
I'm just interested to know how you got started in lobstering. Did you start going with your father, your grandfather, or who was the lobsterman first that you first helped?
I just lived on the neck of Andrews Island, and I never wanted to go to bed at night. My mother put a sheet over, and I was sitting on the steps, and I said to her, "Don't you come near me."
But in the book, and I guess I rushed through that, but I do chronicle, I mean, Ginny, and Max and family talked about, Ginny's family had a place on the neck off Andrews Island, and I got confused. I was like, explain the neck to me again. But she loved the sea at an early age, and her father named the boat Virginia after Ginny, who would go out with her brother at the age of 8, and the love of the sea and lobstering began very early, and it never let go. Oh, and when you think about, you're out at the sea, you're breathing fresh air, and I keep saying I want to see her birth certificate, because I can't believe she's 102 with red skin. And I'm thinking it's the ocean air that does it. But yeah, I mean, and she has done lobstering with her kids, her husband. I don't know if there's anything else, Jim, you want to add to why you love it so much. But the book, I kind of chronicle.
Chronicle her life
Yep.
in the book.
Yep, she did. She was in a factory for a bit and didn't like that too much. knew she wanted to get back to lobstering and came home one day, or she quit, and her husband came back from lobstering and saw the wash on the line, and he said, "What are you doing? I thought you went to work." What'd you say?
I said, "Will you talk?" And well, all at once I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. So I went down and he said, "Well, I'll give you." I said, "Miss Lady makes $12 more an hour than I do." He said, "Well, I can't give you that." I didn't ask you to.
Yeah.
I said, "I want you $12.
Yeah.
I'm going with my husband."
Yeah, she quit.
Yeah, just quit,
Yeah.
just like that.
Yep. Well, Ginny's like that, I think, right, Max? You don't mess around with Ginny. But another story I love that's in the book too is that Ginny never got bit by the lobsters, but one day a crab bit her. She was getting a crab for her son-in-law, and she had 5 stitches, so she went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "What?"
Well, what are you doing out there anyway? I said, "Well, that's because I wanted to do it." And I said, "I'm old enough to do what I want to do." I didn't care if he was the doctor or who it was.
He doesn't know how badass you are. But I think, you know, Ginny's story is you do what you love and no one's getting in her way. And when she did first lobster with her husband, I forget if you said, who was the boss? How did he say that? Like, who was the boss?
Who's the boss? Oh, he always told everybody I was the boss. And I said, "It might just as well be me as you."
That's right. That's right. Gotta be the boss.
Barbara, over
But,
to you
sorry,
now.
go ahead.
I have a question for Jenny. Jenny, are you ever afraid out there?
I said,
Oh, she said, "Are you ever afraid out there?" On the ocean.
"No, no."
No, and then Ginny and Max haul traps, they're not out in the winter. When Max, you come back in like end of October? Just about? Yeah, so they don't go out, they're smart enough not to go out in the winter, that's not worth. But anybody else, or?
And this is for the Olivers as well. Surely you've caught lots and lots of lobsters. Do you like to eat them?
Yeah, I don't give her, do you like to eat lobsters?
You might just well eat them. Just catch them, might as well eat them.
Yep, might as well, somebody's gotta do it.
Ginny, I would like to ask you if you've noticed any changes over the years in the lobsters in the Gulf of Maine as it's gotten warmer.
Did you hear that, Jenny? She said, do you notice any changes in the lobsters?
Oh, they keep changing the laws all the time.
Yeah.
Down there and stuff.
Yeah,
That's the way they do.
and do the lobsters look any different to you, like since you were a little girl, or same?
No.
No, same, same.
Lobster's a lobster.
That's right.
Have you ever caught any rare lobsters, like blue or yellow ones? And if so, how many?
Have you ever caught any blue or yellow lobsters?
We got a yellow spotted one
Yep. A white one? Yep, Max has a white one too.
and a white one.
Yep, and what do you do with those? You throw them back? Yeah. Yeah, it's illegal, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the most interesting thing that you've caught in a trap that's not a lobster?
Did you hear that too? What's the most interesting thing that you've caught in a trap that's not a lobster?
That would be her husband.
Yep.
Oh, I guess so.
No, I guess the husband is the answer. Any other?
Does Wayne wanna add anything?
Yeah, Wayne or?
Wayne, do you wanna?
I'm enjoying this one back here.
Yeah, Wayne's usually up front and center, but
And so if someone has not seen the movie, how do we access the movie?
well, if you Google,
The Lobster Lady. Rockland, Maine. There'll be a whole page on it, and there'll be some of the videos on those pages.
Yeah, the Historical Society one, is it on the Historical Society website, Wayne, the one you all did?
No, but it's on Channel 6.
Okay.
And it's on YouTube. And I think we've got 2 DVDs left in the Historical Society.
I know that Virginia just made a movie with some German filmmakers, and I wondered how that was communicating with them, or they come over here to do the movie, and
Did you hear that, Jim? They wanted to know how you, the German film that was made, like, how did they communicate with you?
could
They
they
had-
speak English? Did they?
They had interpreters.
They,
Yeah, so they could talk English, yep. And they did come here,
And,
yep.
and can you watch that German movie, or where? How do you? I know you can't understand it probably. but-
And we have a link to it that the Historical Society sent out the other day to our members. We'll
Yep.
send it to you, certainly. It's pretty good, I just watched it again this morning.
Yep.
See my movie star friend.
Yep. Go ahead, Wayne.
I got an email from the producer, they were here 3 days filming, and he sent me a link to the program. And they really did a good job, it's a 10-minute program. They had, interpreters speaking, three different ones. One speaking for Max, lady speaking for Virginia, and then they had the narrator speaking. And, they really did a good job, and they spoke English. The name of the production company was Jenks, I think, J-N-X.
And they went out lobstering, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
They went out in
They're on YouTube.
for a
Yeah.
separate boat for them to film from.
Okay.
Any other?
How many boats have you fished off of over the years, and which was your favorite?
Did you get it, Jim? She was asking how many boats you fished in over the years and which one was the favorite. And just-
The one we have now.
Well, and I think that was your husband's boat previously that you fished on, yep. But I guess we'll take one more, question if that's okay. 'Cause I don't wanna, Ginny's been good to come out, and I don't know, you guys going to lobstering tomorrow? I gotta get you out so you're not too tired. So why don't we take a question from one more person?
I was just wondering how they felt about the fame of being admired and loved so much with their story out.
Yeah, what do you think about all these people who think you're pretty special? Well, you think that there's too much fuss, there's no reason to be fuss. Yeah.
Oh, they keep changing the laws all the time.
With the laws.
Yeah, can't leave anything off.
Yeah, she was talking about the lobster, but I mean, if you read the Down East piece, both Max and Ginny talk about, they're just doing what they love. And it's a Maine tradition, hopefully that'll be here for many more generations, but yeah, I think for now, we'll, for those that wanna buy books, I'll quickly sign them, but I think Ginny will go in the Historical Society room, and there's cookies and lemonade, and for those that have already bought books and signed them, you can go in there and Ginny will sign your book there. And I can give you a Sharpie, or give it to Max, but thank you all for a wonderful night. Gotta keep them laughing.
Would you have to stay at the front of the
We want to ask you all to stay where you are while Max and Virginia go down the hall to the society. So please, nobody get up and rush her. I just want to say thank you, Barbara, for doing this.
Yes.
And thank you for, she answered every question honestly, and that's really rare.
A journalist, uh-oh.